All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second inaugural expert interview series live. My name is Josh Matthews Morgan with Learn Your Brain, and I'm very excited about this particular topic that we're going to explore today and our guest, Chandler Walker, that I'm going to bring on in a second. But before I do that, let me explain a little bit about the purpose behind this expert interview series and why I'm doing this. You see, really, our core area of expertise is in the realm of mindset and creating really fast transformations in what we call the emotional brain and helping people create new behaviors and everything that entails. But we know that our audience of coaches and consultants, they also need support in other areas of their life to grow their business that are beyond mindset related topics, right? And so the point of this series is to bring you really awesome experts to help you grow your business with very practical things like marketing and sales, which is one of the areas that coaches tend to struggle with, especially in the early stages of their business. So that's who I brought in today. I'm very, very excited about Chandler Walker, who's the guy I'm going to interview in a second. We connected a little while before, and there is just so much synchronicity in terms of our philosophy on so many things. You know, the brain, behavior, marketing, and sales, that I was just so excited to get him on here and share his wisdom and his insights with our audience. So without further ado, let me, but before I bring Chandler on, just a quick request. If you're watching the live, could you guys throw down a hashtag live, or if you're watching the replay, just throw down hashtag replay. That'll let me know who all is here. It will also allow this video to get out to more and more people, and lots of good stuff will happen, right? Also, if you have any questions for Chandler or for myself, or just want one of us to talk about anything that comes up, feel free to throw it in the chat. If we have time, we will get to your question and try to answer it live. If we don't have time, one of us will give a response after the interview's over. I have a feeling this one's gonna be a deeper dive based on what the pre-conversation I had with Chandler. We're gonna go kind of deep on some really cool stuff. So hopefully we'll have time for questions, but if not, you're gonna get some amazing value regardless. So let me bring on Chandler. And hey, Chandler.
Hey, how's it going?
Going great, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's just kick the whole thing off with just give a little intro for those of you, for the people who don't know you. Who are you, and kind of what's your background, and what led you to getting to being a teacher of marketing and sales?
Yeah, so it all starts off growing up. So when I was growing up, I had a mom who suffered from bipolar disorder. And it was back in the day when people mostly said, hey, just suck it up, pretend like it doesn't exist, think happy thoughts. And that was it. There wasn't really a lot of help. Nobody really believed in finding help in that situation. And she really didn't find a way to really get help or solve this thing until I was in like my 20s almost, or moving into college. And it was because she figured out a combination of like cognitive behavior programs, and she figured out some self-coaching practices that really helped her. And what that did was showed me that I could move into a career in a position to where I can find a way to help people so they don't suffer as long as she did. And I had a father who was an entrepreneur, small business owner. He was always hustling. So as a kid, on that side, I remember going on to job sites with him, and we'd ride in the truck. He'd buy me a donut and orange juice to bribe me to go to work with him. And I just watch him like communicate with customers and talk. And I had a grandfather who was always telling me like, Chandler, you just have to learn how to sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves. And so I had that side of things, which was amazing.
That's still funny. Sell ice to Eskimos, that whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what that did was it led me to college, and I got a degree in biology and biochemistry, and I was on a med school track, but I really felt that where I was headed was mostly into a program where I was medicating people. And I really didn't feel comfortable because I didn't feel like medicating, like my mother, for example, was really what helped her ultimately become able to manage her emotions and self-manage. I feel medication can be an important part, but it can't be the whole part. And so it really disenfranchised me from the system. And this isn't a shot at doctors. It's a shot at the entire system. It's a sick care system. It's not designed to help people long-term. And so what I did at that point was I had the I guess, a little bit of the courage from my father's side of being an entrepreneur to just break off and do my own thing. And that's exactly what I did. We opened up a business we called Stone Age Fuel. It was a brick and mortar devoted to what we called 6 pillars of wellness. So mental health, social health, sleep, nutrition, fitness, and habits. And ultimately, what in the beginning, what I discovered was being a business owner is a lot different than being a college student and doing a lot of these other things. So I did over 3,000 one-on-one conversations with people in terms of like enrolling people and moving them in. And from that, I kind of fell into my own madness because we scaled up 5 businesses after that. My own madness was like, why do I have to bring people in here and manipulate them to sell? Like all these gurus are telling me you have to trick them. I had a coach one time and I was like, I can't figure this out. And he just told me, you just got to be more aggressive. You got to hit them harder. And I never felt comfortable with that. And it destroyed me inside to the point where I was like, I don't even want to run a business if I have to treat people this way. And so I was lucky enough to have good mentors who were on the cognitive psychology side. So I had my degree in biochemistry. I had one of my mentors who was a doctor in clinical psychology who introduced me to cognitive behavior therapy, motivational interviewing, acceptance commitment therapy. And so then I started to look at that and I said, you know what? Marketing and sales and writing copy and teaching people how to sell is just a product of cognitive psychology. And I thought, so what if I took all of these domains that I'm already familiar with and I use these in my process? And I started to do that. I started to create the art of the cognitive questioner. I started creating the challenging leadership model, and I started moving into calming the internal chatter. And I built and developed my entire system we call compassion conversations based on my own madness of not wanting to manipulate people, not wanting to be aggressive, and not wanting to be this like sleazy guy who has to sell his soul to build a business.
Dude, I love that so much. And yeah, I mean, and what I also love about it is that you took insights from one field and applied them to another field, right? And so I've found that in our work too, that the more deeper you study human behavior from a psychological level and the brain and all these things, the better you become at marketing and sales, and the more compassionate you become too, in terms of understanding what drives behavior, right? Which is ultimately, from a business context, which is what we're all trying to do, is drive people's behavior towards hopefully a better outcome. Like, there's some people who are the sleazy manipulative ones don't have that framework, but the good ones, like, you and I, like, we're focused on authentically connecting with people to drive them to better results in their lives. Right.
Exactly. So, I always tell people, it's like, I'm not trying to tell you to do anything. I don't want to convince you to do anything. I don't want you to make any decision that's not the best decision for you. But what I am going to do is help you give yourself permission to say yes to you. Yeah. Because most people don't give themselves that permission. They say no to themselves perpetually and they suffer for years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so unfortunate, man. That's such a deep subject too. They say no to themselves. They say no to their dreams. They convince themselves that they don't deserve it in some way, or they're not good. They're not good enough. I'm sure we could talk about that for hours, but it's like giving that whole enrollment concept of enrolling a new client is encouraging them to say yes to themselves. Like, more than anything else is really that. And of course, helping them understand that you're the way, that you're the vehicle that's going to help them get to where they want to go. Right. Like your process, your method, working with you, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny. I always tell people, it's like when you produce content and information, when you're selling, it's not really, it becomes less about you and more about helping them become aligned with what can possibly help them. And so I tell people, like, when you're writing your copy, it's not about like my program. It's not about me. It's not about what I do. It's about helping you understand that I get your pains, your problems, your issues, what you've been struggling with to a deeper level than you do. And I understand what the beautiful future looks like more clear than you do. And like when we talk on a sales conversation or an enrollment call, it's like you go through everything. And because we use aspects of motivational interviewing and stuff like that in what we do, we're able to relay back the words you say better than you said them. So you feel this strong, deep connection. And then the pitch ends up being, it's not like, hey, we do this pillar, and this pillar. What do you think? It's like, it's specific and tailored and designed to exactly what you need. Nothing more, nothing less. Because if you give people too much, they don't know. They go into like overload. I need to think
overwhelm. Yeah. I love that. And actually, that's one of the biggest lessons and takeaways that I've ever gotten from sales, is to make your thing personalized to the person that you're selling to. And that in itself is a ginormous lesson, in terms of like even grabbing their attention initially, it's got to feel personal to them. It's got to feel like something that's relevant, personally relevant to them before they even will pay attention to you in the first place, if you're talking from a copywriting term, right? And so if you don't know what's relevant to that person or to that audience or to that market, you're just shooting in the dark in terms of anyways. So yeah, I could go on for about that, but
it's true. And that's a good point. And it's like the art of polarization. A lot of people tell you to polarize, but they're like, hey, just say offensive things. And that's not polarizing yourself.
No.
What it is it's like, I did a post the other day where my headline was, I hate group coaching, because I really don't like the aspect of group coaching as a standalone. And I went into it's all about the guru. It's all about ego. If something's wrong, they blame it on your mindset. And so that's literally things that people go through and struggle with and suffer from in their programs. And it's essentially polarizing yourself. Like now you've created an island to stand on. I'm not about this. I'm about this.
Right. Yes. I love that. And it's a very helpful marketing tool, but like you said, you can't just be throwing rocks at the enemy, right? Like people, that old phrase, throw rocks at the enemy, that comes from the copywriting world. If you don't have a nuanced, like you can throw the rock, like in your headline. I don't want to get super deep on copy, formats and outlines, but you can throw the rock and to grab the attention, but then you need to give them a little more nuanced understanding of why that rock was thrown. If that makes sense. Do you agree with that? Or
oh yeah, don't just be a jerk, because then you're going to be labeled as a jerk. And the other end of the spectrum, I see people, they're like, well, I talk about my political beliefs because that's who I want to align with. I'm like, well, what if people who are on the opposite end of the spectrum want to work with you too? It's like, have some tolerance, because when I see someone who markets and promotes himself that way, I see someone who doesn't have tolerance for the other side. And so then I'm like, well, maybe it's polarizing, but I wouldn't work with you, because I have people who are on all ends of the spectrum. I don't care who you are, what you do, what you believe, or what you think about. I care about you as a human being and a person.
I love that. And that's that compassionate piece that you're so good at, and that you're just weave into every aspect of what you do. Man, the political thing, I could go down a deep rabbit hole on that subject too, but that's so absolutely true. I mean, why does it matter? I don't care what my clients' politics are. I really don't. And, I consider myself more independent anyways. So that's like why I don't post stuff on Facebook, because it so easily gets, so easily polarizes in a non-helpful way. Why does your marketing need to be about politics? Why do, unless you're selling political stuff or whatever, you don't need to tell everyone your views on politics to get clients or polarize them.
Exactly. And it's like, I always try to think ahead too. It's like, if I post about politics, what did I just do? I created a thread on my Facebook page where people are going to fight for days about it. And so if I was able to post something out and people could have a constructive conversation, what do you mean by that? Why do you think that way? What's going on there? Then maybe I would be more inclined to do that. But I'm not going to promote the polarization of society and promote hate, basically, that propels people to only see rage and see red. And so for me, it's like, that's not the spectrum I align with. And I don't think it's the spectrum that you should align with as you scale, because it's like, polarization is one thing. I stand for this. I don't like group coaching or whatever, but it's not, hey, I'm conservative, I'm liberal, whatever. I think that's the spectrum that really, you eliminate a lot of good people who could be part of your program for a purpose that you don't really understand.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes. And if you're making the assumption, I don't want to work with the other side, then that in itself is an issue, because you probably have some preconceived notions about what the other side is and what they represent. And it's like, you're probably creating a caricature of what the other side actually is. But that's a topic that's like,
I know your own bias, and I know your tolerance levels. And if if you're not able to tolerate the other side, then I don't really even know if you have business being a coach, because you're supposed to be able to work on both ends of the spectrum. People are going to struggle. Even when they struggle, tell them to suck it up. And so you can kind of see where it leads and what the programs look like internally if there's no tolerance externally.
Yeah. Love that, man. Love that. So let me pivot slightly into, let's talk about content marketing for a second. And you have this really cool take on it that, helpful content. So coaches always think, I just need to put out a bunch of value into the world, right? And then I'll get clients. So I just need to, create these content videos that are just straight value bombs and stuff like that. And I don't really believe that's the best way to go about it. And I know you don't believe that's the best way to go about it. So can you talk a little bit more about why that's actually not a good strategy? Is that a fair way to sum that up? Like that you're you don't really like that strategy?
Yeah, that's perfect. Good summation. Yeah. So the way I think of it is so content in and of itself is a commodity. Content,
Right.
just because you put out content, isn't copy. And so
Mm.
when you look at content, if you put out helpful content, people are going to read it. Then they're going to move on to the next thing. They're going to read it. They're going to move on to the next thing. You don't necessarily have permission to coach someone yet. So they might
Mm.
try it. They're probably going to
Right.
fail, and they're going to go on and do the next thing. I can go on YouTube and Google how to build a business, how to
Mhm.
market a
Mhm.
business, how to coach, and sit there for 17 hours looking at stuff. And
Mm.
so what in my opinion, what really creates good copy, good content that captivates hearts and minds and gives you permission to enter someone's soul, is
Mhm.
copy that is built and designed around emotions. Emotional copy is really what copy should be. It
Mm.
shouldn't be designed around this, like, here's 3 helpful strategies to help you lose weight.
Right.
Here's 10 tips
Right.
to drink more kombucha at bedtime. It's deep. Here's the real reason why you look in the mirror and you hate what you see on the other side. Some people are afraid to
Mhm.
put that stuff, but that's what people think and feel internally. Here's the
Yes.
real reason why when you look at yourself, you feel disgust. Here's the real
Mm.
and we don't have to use, we don't have to attack people. I looked
Right.
in the mirror and I felt this way for
Yes.
years, and here's why. And what does that
Mm.
do? Well, it aligns me now. People, wow, I've always felt that way. And your post connected so deeply with me. And so
Mm.
what happens in that position? Well, people start to interact with you emotionally. When you
Mm.
try to do helpful content, that's logically, people don't care, they move on.
Mm.
But emotionally,
Right.
they become connected to you. They want to become part of what you do. They want to look deeper at what you do, because if there's one thing at the end of the day people will always remember, it's how you made them feel. They'll forget everything
Absolutely.
else you taught them. They'll forget all the
Absolutely.
business practices, all the helpful stuff. But if you consistently make them feel better about themselves and better about their
Mhm.
situation, or help them realize the situation they're in, well, that completely changes the paradigm. And now you're a leader in their eyes.
I love that. I love that. Oh man, so much good stuff just in that. And you know, the way we explain it when we're working, you know, in all of our content and coaching is that this is a vast oversimplification, right? And so this is not true, but you got at the top level of the brain is what we call the rational brain, right? The cortex. The lower regions of the brain is what we call the emotional brain, which is the site of emotion and is really what's largely responsible for driving behavior more than anything else, right? So if all your marketing and your content, like Chandler just said, is just appealing to that rational brain, the thinking brain, going, oh yeah, that's interesting, or like that's cool tips, you're not really emotionally hooking people, like you said, right? But if you know and understand the beliefs, the emotional roadmap inside of the brains of your prospects at a deeper level, at that subconscious emotional brain level, then you can do everything. I mean, you know, let's talk about that for a second, because you can be a puppeteer in the sense of, you know, like once you really know this stuff, guiding people towards an outcome, but people can also use this knowledge to manipulate, right? And so what do you think in terms of that? Like, I know you're a very integrity-based guy and that's what you stand for, but what do you think about that in terms of like how gurus are doing in their marketing?
Yeah, I think it does end up in a side of things where people are beginning to be manipulated, and I see this in like sales conversations with gurus and the way they write. They start to make people feel bad about not making a decision. They start to make
Right.
people feel bad about like saying no. It's like, oh, you said no today. Well, are you okay with being a failure? It's like, that's manipulation right there. If someone says no, my response is usually just, that's fine. That's all right. Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking and what's going on in your head, because it's my position in what we do is, if I force them to make a decision, that's manipulation. If I help them come to their own truth and they make the decision that's best for them, then that's exactly where we need to be.
Yes.
And I think this whole,
I love that.
sometimes, and this might ruffle feathers, but I think sometimes like the NLP world really moves people in this realm of manipulate, move them to the point to where they make a decision, and you're forcing that decision. And I think the problem in that world, and I use a little bit of NLP, I'm not saying it's all horrible, but I think sometimes it does lead into the route to where it becomes solely about manipulation, and it puts people in a place to where it's a very short-term manipulated environment too, because they feel these things now, but it goes away. And whereas what we teach on our side of things with like CBT and our compassion conversations, it's a long-term process. Your first conversation with me is setting the stage to get permission to be vulnerable with you, to allow me to have the opportunity to potentially coach you and to open up with you deeper as we move forward. So 8 weeks from now, 12 weeks from now, we've created real change that's going to be change that's facilitated long-term that actually lasts.
Yes. And that's, if we're just talking in pure terms of positioning, right? That's some of the most powerful expert positioning that you can have. Is to, how do you position yourself as an expert? For one, be an expert, like in what you're doing. That's like, there's no other way around that. And what I think really magnetizes people towards any given expert is you explaining why they haven't gotten results yet, in a very authentic, real way, and making that emotional connection. And, ideally why your method or your way is better, or will get them results faster, or with less pain, or with less, whatever it is, right? They talk about that a lot in the marketing or the copywriting world, but it's so important for sales too, that you are a leader, like you just said, and you lead them towards, a better outcome, and position yourself as that, not as buy my program, not as like, here's why you need my program, right? What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I think it's true. And I have this philosophy there's two pieces here. Inside of our cognitive framework, we call it connecting the dots. And then there's the model of the challenging leader. So what you need to do is help people understand. And when you look at CBT, it's about taking the past and helping you realize where it creates triggers today, and how you can spot that and recognize that to continue moving forward and learn to be comfortable with your triggers and yourself. Because we can't pretend that these triggers are going to go away. They're going to manifest. They're going to come up from past experiences. And then you're going to learn to spot it. I noticed I'm feeling this way right now. Well, why am I feeling this way? I learned to question my thoughts. And so inside of our sales process, what I like to do is you start to learn that it's more than, often it's taught about just find the pain, just dig deep. And it's more than that. If you get someone crying in a disaster, they're not going to be in a comfortable state or an ethical state to really make a decision. So what it is it's about understanding their emotional state, where their pain is, and it's understanding where that came from. So for example, if I was on like a call for weight loss, sometimes it's, so tell me a little bit about how long you've been trying to do this. Oh, like this. And then you start digging deeper and deeper into their past. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I noticed something a little concerning here. Challenging leader. I drop my tone, but I don't sound like a jerk. That's concerning. I noticed it's something a little concerning here. Well, what's concerning? Well, you told me a minute ago that you were forced to eat your entire plate as a kid, every day, all day, for most of your life. And now you told me you have this overeating problem. So I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but there's a connection there. And this is probably what's sabotaging you. And so what did I do there? I opened up a Pandora's box. Like this person, we think of these things like, oh yeah, everybody would have thought about that. But these people don't think that way. They don't understand that's a connection. Once you create that connection and that bridge is drawn, all of a sudden this person's now like, wow, I never thought about that way. So all these things I've been trying have been failures. And it's because of the way I grew up. Well, how do I fix it? What do I do? The whole world just got shattered. And it's not because you're being a jerk. It's because you're helping them understand the situation. Dots. Exactly. Connect the dots. And you can help the person come to their own truth, like we talk about.
I love that, man. Oh, dude, this is so good. And what kind of is cool about this too, is it ties in with this concept of the challenger sale. Have you heard that before too, from the selling world? Like this whole thing
I love the challenger sale.
Right. And so like, I think when I first heard that though, I was just like, ooh, that sounds like the old school way of being really aggressive and really pushy and challenging people. But and that is one way to do the challenger sale. It's not the best way to do the challenger sale. Exactly. The better way is the way you just described, which is where you approach it with compassion, curiosity. You challenge them, but in a way where it doesn't feel like you're, putting any pressure on them. It's a way that helps them connect the dots for themselves. Right. And I just love that. I love that concept, connect the dots. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And that's one of the big tenets we teach inside our program. It's like, number one, get rid of the script so you don't sound like a robot reading stuff. And number two, it's like, here's the process. Like, it's not just the pain, it's connect the dots. It's this, it's this, it's this. And if you need to challenge someone, you're not a jerk. You're not aggressive challenging someone. You're a leader. A leader should be able to say things that are difficult and hard to hear. And people should be able to absorb that appropriately and understand that it comes from a place of love, care, and concern.
Yes.
And so when I challenge someone, it's like, did you know that you're doing something wrong? Like, that sounds terrible, but it's hey, I noticed something from our conversation, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it might be kind of a big deal. And so my tonality plays a big part there too. I really need to understand the way I'm portraying myself and the way I'm being heard, so I can become that challenging leader, and I can really become that person they feel comfortable being vulnerable with.
Yes, love that, dude. Well, let's talk about objection handling for a second too, because this is a perfect segue into that. Like, so I think by now everyone knows that neither of us are a fan of the old school way of handling objections, where it's just like, I don't even want to give it air and time and space on an interview like this, because some of it is so manipulative. I'll give a quick story. Actually, this is kind of funny. I used for a hot minute, I sold Cutco knives when I was younger. And do you know about that? Like the door-to-door sales type of deal? It didn't last very long because the sales manager who was coaching me was like, I mentioned that this objection had come up when I was, in the ladies, when I was talking to this lady, and she was like, oh, it was, I need to speak to my husband, right? Which is I need to speak to my significant other, my business partner, whatever, depending on what you're selling. That's a common objection, right? Well, this guy goes, what you need to do is you need to throw it right back at her and say, well, does your husband ask you for permission for everything that you do? And
that's the worst. I hate that.
It's so bad, dude. And I was like, I'm out. I literally quit like the next day, because I was like, this feels so wrong. It feels so manipulative.
Oh, I had someone on a call. I'll remember it forever. I was a big guru. I was kind of pretty close. I was like, I'm going to do this thing. It seems neat. And then he asked me like, so are you going to do it, or are you scared? And I was like, oh my, he's playing on my ego. I don't have an ego. I don't care. Maybe I am scared. I don't care. But at that point I was like, yeah, you know what? If that's the culture that's in this program, if that's the culture that's taught, it changed everything. I was like, no, you know what? I'm not interested. I'm done with this.
Dude, trust takes time to build up, right? Like, and it doesn't happen immediately, but if you're really good in the sales process, for example, at eliciting trust, and in your marketing, but trust can be destroyed in literally one moment, just like that. That's the thing that people don't understand about the old school way, why it's so inferior as a way of selling, is because deep down, you lose their trust immediately when they start doing stuff like that, right? Like there's this is my take, that like they subconsciously, anytime you're selling and you're what is it? Your objective is to get the sale, like switches over to that, they feel it. And they know that the words you're saying are for that purpose, to make the sale. And trust can get destroyed in a half a second when you do that, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's totally true. One of our concepts we teach is calming the internal chatter. And what that is it's removing your attachment for the need to make the sale. Because what happens in this culture of high ticket sales or whatever, or regular sales, is it's like you need to close them on one call or they're never coming back. It's like, but what kind of a relationship is that with somebody?
Seriously, yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, no. So in the beginning, we teach them how to, what I call it is it's training the empty mind. You're becoming for lack of a better term, the peaceful warriors. So you're coming into this thing, you're removing all need, you're removing all want, you're removing your emotional attachment to the outcome of the conversation, and installing the attachment to be here to serve and to help someone come to their truth. And so once we can install that, it's all of a sudden now people can kick back in their chair, they can get more comfortable in the conversation, doesn't feel like the scripted thing, the person on the other side feels good. And then it can move into, it can be a 1-call close, it can be a 2-call, it can be a 3-call. I've had people come back 6 months later, or no call close. Maybe they don't need it. So, or maybe you just check in with them every so often, and it builds the relationship. And that's what kills people in most of their programs. So they're so front end heavy with marketing, they forget that sales is about relationships. And so it's like, hey, if I don't get this sale on day one, who cares? I'm going to follow up with them until they tell me not to, or they're not interested. And I'm going to create a pipeline of people from follow-ups, a pipeline from the relationships I'm building that's probably going to, for us, sometimes that's 50% of our sales is follow-ups, because we build that relationship. We continually allow it to flourish, and we don't write anybody off just because they weren't ready on day one.
Absolutely. I love that. And I do believe that the majority of sales happen from follow-up. The thing about becoming this amazing 1-call closer, like that, everyone's like, that's just such an ego-driven thing. And it's not helpful, I don't care about my one call close rate on a conversation with a prospect. If you care about that, then you're thinking about the wrong thing, like, I don't know.
Exactly.
I think this is my take on measuring sales success, and you might have a different one, but you should enroll 100% of the prospects who are perfect fits for your program, in the sense of, and I know there's a lot of nuance to this, and 0% of the ones who are, not. And does that make sense? Like,
oh yeah, it's true. When I look at it, it's within 15 minutes of the conversation, I know if I can help somebody, and I know if I'm going to give them an offer. And some people talk about don't give everyone an offer, but in reality, everyone's giving offers. They don't care. Yeah. But for me, it's like, if I go into a pitch, like if I'm giving the offer, hey, this is what I can do for you, it's because I believe I can help you at that point. Right. If I don't, I'm going to tell you, hey, I think at this point, what we should do is let's stay connected. I'm going to send you some stuff that's going to be helpful, and I'll check in with you every now and again, but I think you need a little more time. And what that does is it moves you away from that attachment and that need to sell, and puts you in this place, in this position to where you are there for their best interest, and you're truly there for their best interest.
Yes, that's it. Absolutely. Man, that's such good stuff. I mean, and it's such a different way of selling than what a lot of coaches have been taught. That's the thing that I like. That's why I was excited to talk to you about this, because I knew we would go deep on this subject in a way that not a lot of people are teaching, frankly. It's just like this old school way of thinking has really invaded mindsets and coaching programs. And I personally think, what do you think? Over time, this way of selling that you're talking about will outperform the old school way. If you took two people 1-to-1, and you had the old school one and you got the Chandler way of selling, what do you think, in terms of like the actual success rate of people enrolling?
Oh, it's going to be, I think it's like, so, and I think the big difference is it's like, you don't become a front end heavy sales organization. And for me, the reason, and this might sound weird, the reason my businesses have grown so fast and so well is because of my mouth, my ability to communicate and create relationships. And so what happens with the way we teach is you not only enroll people from maybe the first call or whatever, but you create this snowball impact. And all of a sudden, it's like every month you have 5 more people coming out, 5 more people coming out. And you have this huge enrollment pipeline of people who you're building relationships with and who you've been continually in contact with. So now, rather than being this organization that requires like hundreds of thousands of dollars in Facebook ads and all these leads, you have a huge pipeline to pull from on the back end. And that's really what creates like a mature organization, when you have the ability to get your leads from sales on the back end, like people coming back, from referrals from people who love you, and then from people who create these like relationships and partnerships with you. That becomes like the ability to grow to the next level. So you get out of this idea of it has to be Facebook ads, it has to be YouTube ads, it has to be appointment setters DMing a million people a day, and get into this. It's like, I need to enroll people that I built relationships with. I need to get referrals from those enrollments. And then I need to find partners who I've built relationships with. And now all of a sudden your return on ad spend is like 175 times, because everybody who comes in ends up being a client eventually. And now you have this huge snowball. So with what we do, it's a long-term strategy for long-term success, rather than what happens in most programs. It's short-term strategy, one call close and then you don't have a pipeline.
Right. And even if you did have a pipeline, those people are much less likely to sign up for you, because they don't trust you, and they know that you were just trying to one call close them, and it wasn't in their best interest. And so you can chase down some more people that way and follow up, but it's not going to be nearly as effective as the way you just laid out.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden it's like, and most people, they don't have a referral system. They don't have a system to bring referrals. And for me, that's not a marketing function. That's a sales function. If I enroll somebody and I move them into a call with their coach is going to ask them, we're going to ask them multiple times and make sure they're aware that we do appreciate referrals. And I'd rather take care of them than Zuckerberg. And so what happens is you build this culture, this culture of care. And that's what I call my businesses ultimately, where the culture of care. And so it's this culture to where it's like, how do you even grow? Well, we grow everything on the back end. We grow, we have ads and stuff running, but we don't have to depend on that because we have such a big system and a strong system on the back end. And I was talking with a client about this the other day. I was like, you hit that 20K a month zone, and all of a sudden now your business just snowballs into growth and scale, because all of a sudden now it's the 20K, but now you're getting referrals. Every one person you bring in becomes 3 more people. And this thing just starts becoming its own animal.
Absolutely. That snowball effect. I love that. That's awesome. So good, man. So we've touched on a lot of different cool stuff. And by the way, none of this is like, we didn't rehearse this ahead of time. We just kind of like started talking like right before we went live, and we're just like, man, this is going to go deep and this is going to go to a lot of cool areas. And it has. So I'm like super excited about that. So let's just make sure we're hitting on this. And I just want to hear your take on this. These unheard of thought patterns that your prospects are thinking every day, right? This idea that this is a little bit more of a marketing and copywriting thing versus sales, although it definitely touches on sales. But how do you identify those thought patterns that are maybe not helping them, that you can reframe in your marketing and your copywriting? Where do you even start with that?
Yeah, so I teach this in a segment I call the belief values framework. So everybody has beliefs and values associated with the way they feel. And so with our belief values framework, there's an external statement, like I hate myself. And then there's internal belief, which is an iceberg. And so those internal beliefs are what I call paradoxical thought patterns. And so more often than not, what we teach somewhere around I think it's like 14 to 20 different paradoxical thought patterns that people typically go through. But what it is it's like, one is like, hey, I didn't do this right, so I'm going to fail forever. What is that? That's all or nothing thinking. So what happened? It went straight to the negative. And so that's one example. And how do you reframe that? It's like, well, in copy, it's like, well, maybe you failed once, and yeah, maybe we all fail once, and maybe failure is a part of life. But maybe it's how you grow. The most successful people in the world, they failed and they had troubles growing, but eventually with consistency that they stuck with it and ultimately won. And so we can say that little thing that I just did off the cuff and use that as sort of an example to write copy that says I failed, I suck, into I failed, but I can get better. Maybe I can do this. Maybe everybody does fail. Maybe the people who do quit are the ones who don't succeed, but the people who fail and keep going are the ones who win because they were consistent. And so we take those patterns, we design the beliefs, and we understand the beliefs and the framework from the external statement and the internal belief. And then we figure out what the iceberg is underneath the internal belief pattern. And then we take that and we use it to write pieces surrounding every one of those painful thought patterns and beliefs people go through on a daily basis. And when you really learn to map this out, that's when you can build emotional copy. That's when copy becomes powerful. And that's really what copy is. It's speaking to people's emotions. And that's what it should be. But it's become this like bastardized system to where it's have a countdown timer and use a lot of emojis and put helpful stuff. And it's like, that's not copy. Like true copy and true scarcity is built upon using the way they feel, understanding the way they feel better than they do, and being able to write about that to a way to where they feel like they need to solve it right now, but they need to solve it with you because you being the only one who's been able to explain it in the way they feel.
Exactly. I love that, dude. Oh man, this is so good. And so actually, I want to just give you a quick story. I know we're getting on the 37-minute mark, so we're going strong here, but about the fake scarcity thing, right? Because that's how a lot of gurus teach you how to do it. We tried that with a just-in-time webinar. You know, the thing where it's like you pretend like you're going live. It's like, and then they tell you to do that because it gets higher engagement rates, right? So it always felt a little bit off to me because that's kind of deceiving the people who you're marketing to, but we tried it, and you know how they got it like every 15-minute block they can sign up for. Have you seen when they do that?
I'm just in time for it.
Yeah, holy crap, this is amazing.
Wow.
And so we ran ads to that, right? And the page was converting horribly. I don't remember the figures right now, but it was like less than a 10% opt-in rate, and for opt-in pages, that's pretty low. And all we did to change it was we literally got rid of that fake scarcity. We literally just said the copy was exactly the same. We just got rid of the lie that they were signing up for something live, and it went up to like 35-40% opt-in rate. And I was just like, whoa, like this tactic that this guru was teaching me is actually not the optimal way because it's over market sophistication too. People know when you're doing fake scarcity, right?
Oh yeah,
they know it.
They're like, there's no way this guy's doing webinars on the hour, every hour for
Right.
12 hours a day. And there's no way I just magically happened upon it.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden I was like, oh, look, I did it. So it's like,
Yes.
be real with people and don't treat
Yes.
people like they're stupid, because they're not.
Yes, they're not. They're not. And I feel a little bit embarrassed telling that story, because that's one example of when us going down that a little bit of a manipulative rabbit hole, but we were just convinced that that was the right way to do things, right? It's just, it felt wrong, but it, like, you know, a lot of people get misled like that. So anyways.
Oh yeah. And I think we've all been there. I tried those kind of webinars way back in the day too. And it's because that's what you were supposed to do. And that's like what led me into my own madness in creating this system. I was like, I'm tired of doing what I'm supposed to do, but doesn't feel right.
Right. Exactly. I love that, man. That's so good. Well, let's wrap up for a second, because we've touched on a lot of things. Unless there's something else like that you really want to share with our audience, there's a couple resources that Chandler has created that I think would be very interesting for anyone who wants to go deeper on this, on the sales and marketing and doing that with compassion and care. So do you want to tell them a little bit more, unless there's something else you want to get in at the buzzer in terms of a last thought? We can maybe do that at the very end too. Tell them a little bit more about the resources.
Yeah. So basically I organized a couple resources inside my Facebook group. The first one that I think will be helpful is the 3 steps to enrolling high ticket clients through compassion conversations. So I'm going to show you the 3 simple steps that we follow to make this whole process we just talked about for 40 minutes work. And then the other piece that I want people to get a hold of is how to write copy that captivates hearts and minds. So how to write emotional copy that really pops and get rid of the educational copy side of things. If you want access to those, just go to facebook.com/groups/beyond method. The group is called Marketing High Ticket Sales and Mindset for Online Coaches and Consultants. And the other thing that I'm going to do for people is the first 10 that opt in, I'm going to either review a portion of one of your sales calls, or I'm going to review a piece of your copy. So when you join the Facebook group, go to facebook.com/groups/beyond method. Just inside the questions, just put a 10, and then I'll know that you're one of the first 10. And then I'll go in there, I'll tag you in the trainings, and then I'll reach out and see if you want your piece of sales call review, or if you want your copy reviewed, and I'll go through and take care of it. All of it's free. Just want to take care of everybody. And like I said, I practice what I preach. So I'm here to provide information and build a relationship with people. So eventually they might want to work with me if it might make sense. So just go to facebook.com/groups/beyond method.
Awesome. And I will put that link also for all this in the comments when the interview is finished. We, unfortunately, with the software we're using, I can't just throw it right into the chat and have it push out to Facebook. But yeah, we'll make sure you can get those links so you can track down those resources Chandler talked about. So yeah, man, it was fantastic having you on. I've been excited about this since we got it on the schedule, because I knew we would talk about some really cool stuff and go really deep. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, man.
Yeah, happy to be here. And like I was telling you at the beginning, when we start talking, we're probably going to wake up 3 days later in a bathtub full of cheeseburgers and have no idea how we got there. And that's exactly
that's exactly what happened. Lots of different detours but wonderful steps along the way. So that's the way I like to do these kinds of things. So I think you and I both like to improvise and, shoot from the hip, but with our expertise and our knowledge,
Exactly.
So,
we were talking about how if you can't chat for at least an hour about whatever you're passionate about, you probably haven't achieved mastery yet. Not that it's a bad thing.
Absolutely. Right. You're just not a true expert yet, which is fine, Yeah. Cool, man. Well, let's leave it at that. That's wonderful. You guys know how to get in touch with Chandler. He's on Facebook. Check out his Facebook group. I'm actually going to go and sign up for those resources because that sounds fantastic. And everything, I love everything about your work, man. And keep all the good momentum going.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you. I love what you're doing here. And I love everything that the community is moving towards is compassion and this culture of care. And so I think we really align on that. And for those listening, I'm a nice guy. So if you don't even want the resources and you just want to ask questions, just friend request me on Facebook. As long as you don't, I'm here to help and support. I answer questions all day in Messenger, and I don't pitch people. So I'm here to build that culture of care and eat my own food.
Your own dog food.
Yeah. Your own food. I was going to say garbage, but it's not garbage.
No, it's not. Yeah. Don't do that. Don't.
Exactly.
That's hilarious. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks again so much. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share all these value bombs with our audience.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thanks for jumping on with me. And thanks for everybody
man.
for listening.
Absolutely. All right. Be well. We'll see ya.